Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We have one special guest with us. Let me tell you about myself first. I'm International Astronomical Union Dark Skies Ambassador, founder of Cosmic Tribe, and also celebrating International Dark Sky Week this year with our special guest with us, Mr. Marlin. So, hello, Mr. Marlin. Can you hear us?
Aloha from Hawaii.
Aloha.
Yeah, I just go by Marlin. You don't need to use the Mr. I'm just Marlin. And I'm here up in my tree deck. And this is my monkey pod tree behind me. So I'm about 20 feet, 30 feet off of the ground up here.
Wow.
I'm closer to the stars. I'm closer to the stars.
Yes. So tell us about yourself, because I know a lot about you, how you started your journey, your beautiful journey of your life, and what you're doing these days. Tell us about yourself, especially. Yes.
Sure. So I have a very interesting life story. I ran away with the circus when I was 17 and I took care of elephants. And
Wow.
when I left that, I started juggling on street corners, a busker, and became a professional juggler and did very well with it. I was on television in Europe and the United States. I played in Las Vegas. And it was a time when I was traveling from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, and the drive between the two is about 5 hours. And there's some very, very dark skies between the two. This was like 1986. And I remember going out to see Halley's Comet when it went by. Some friends took me out there, and it was like a 3-hour drive to get away from the lights of Los Angeles without getting too close to the lights of Las Vegas. So you're like right in the middle. And I'm looking up at the sky and I'm thinking to myself, this goes by unnoticed every night because people's lights are on. This is like, this is so fantastic. What is going on? And I started doing performance art pieces in the dark. Some of you may be familiar with a smudge stick. It's like a bundle of sage and, copal, and you light it and you blow on it and it makes embers. And I'd be standing on a dark stage and I'd blow on this and my face would glow. And then I tap it and all the little embers would float around in the dark. And I started, asking the question, how many stars do you know besides our sun? The Milky Way galaxy goes by every night unnoticed because our lights are on. And isn't it ironic that light travels millions and millions of light years to reach our eyes, and it's being drowned out right there at the finish line, just like a few feet above our head because of streetlights.
Yes.
So then what ended up happening was I left my career. I left Los Angeles, I left Las Vegas, I sold my house, and I moved to the jungles of Hawaii, and I built a tree house that I lived in for 5 years with no electricity. So I became very conscious of all of the light from the moon and from the stars and from the lava down the road. And that was our entertainment. We would go down there and watch the lava flow. And, one of the things that becomes very apparent when you don't have streetlights is that a good portion of the month when the moon is out, you can totally navigate easily around at night without a flashlight. And so one night we're out on the lava flow and I'm looking at people and they're just glazed by the light. They're just, transfixed, and reminded me of deer when you're driving a car and an animal stops in the headlights and just freezes. And then I thought how a moth goes around a flame, and or a light, and then how a plant will turn and face the sun, and then I had this thought that, oh my gosh, all life is drawn to light. And then the next
Yeah.
thought was, gee, the whole world would want to see a show like that. And then the next thought was, oh my God, I'm going back into show business. So I started playing with light, the light technology that was available. This was back in the late 80s, very early 90s. Now, mind you, back then there was only a green and a red LED. The blue LED didn't come around until 1996, which allowed the mixing of three primary colors to create all the other colors. So I was using very, very crude technology and created a show done in the dark, excuse me, to bring awareness to the loss of our night sky. And that show grew up to become LUMA. And I think I sent you a poster that you can show your viewers. And that
Yes.
show ended up touring to 15 different countries, 5 continents. It toured for 20 years. We played performing arts centers, everything from 500 seats to 10,000 seats. We played on the Filmfare Awards in India. That was a big deal for us. And it was funny because that happened in like, I think 2004, 2003. And as I'm watching the show, I'm out by the light booth and I'm on the headset and I'm calling the cues and I'm seeing my cast on stage, like a long ways off, because it's a really big, it's all set up outside. And that thought, the time compression of me having that thought back in 1989, the whole world would want to see a show like that. And here I was watching the whole world watching, our little portion of the Filmfare Awards. So what ended up happening is when we played in 2017 in Lake Tahoe, I was invited to be on a radio show to talk about light pollution. And I invited Scott Farrabbrand, who was the executive director of the International Dark Sky Association, on the show with me. And we started talking and he learned about LUMA and he goes, my gosh, would you come to Boston and give a talk on how the arts can enact social change? So they invited me in 2017. I gave a little talk about it. And then they had me back again in 2018. And the talk that I gave then, it was about if we're saving the night skies for the next generation, what are we doing to attract the next generation? So it was all about a game that I created in my mind. It's all out on paper, but it was called the Star Seeker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it taught kids about astronomy and astrophysics. And the game, I really can tell you a little bit about this game. The player would go around and steal the light off of lampposts or car lights, and then they would get in a space elevator and take the light up into the sky and build their constellations. And you had to do it in a certain amount of time. Otherwise, they'd all fall back down as shooting stars and you had to start again. So the first constellation you would build would be Orion. And then once Orion is built, Orion would come to life and go, good job, Star Seeker. Now find me the horse head. And then the player would have to go, what's the Horsehead? And they eventually find out he's talking about the Horsehead Nebula. So he has to go and capture the Horsehead Nebula, bring it to Orion and goes, okay, where do you want to go next? So the Star Seeker builds out his constellations in his night sky to go to the next level of play. And there was, you'd have to go into the catacombs of the Vatican to find the plans to build a telescope, going back in times of Galileo, and the Vatican didn't want people to know about that. So you had to build a telescope and fill out a periodic table. You'd have to crash 2 stars together and have all of these atoms floating around, and you'd have to gather them and then fill out your periodic table to go to the next level. So it was a lot of, so that's what ended up happening. So the way that the further what happened beyond that is I started giving talks to various tourism boards about astrotourism, and the state of Nebraska invited me in. Nebraska is it's on the Great Plains of America, and they haven't really done anything there to cultivate that. It's just like a brand new topic. And so I gave a talk on that. It was so well received that I was like, okay, more people need to know about this. And a couple of years ago, I was on LinkedIn and I saw an ad saying, we're looking for authors for different topics, how to be an executive, leadership, tourism. And I thought, tourism.
Yes.
And the light went on over
Sure.
my, as it does. And I
Yeah.
pitched an idea for doing a book on astrotourism. Now, the editor, the publisher, he'd never heard of this before, but contacted one of his editors who teaches tourism at the University of New Mexico. And she writes back going, oh yes, astrotourism, this is like a real thing now, and it's growing, and it's been written up in the New York Times and Condé Nast. So they gave me the green light, and I just finished the book. Right now it's in production. We're going through the final edits, the layout of the book. I've already got the cover. I sent you a picture of the cover, and I'm super excited. It's already gotten some great reviews from Valerie Stimac, who wrote the Lonely Planet Guides to Dark Sky, a practical guide for astrotourism, and Bob Maison, who the British Astronomical Society, and he wrote the book How to Find a Million-Star Hotel. And both of them are just really giving me a big couple of big thumbs up on the book, and I'm so excited about that. Yeah.
This is so interesting. I would like to ask you more questions related to, you have seen the world from less light polluted to the current situation, how this world has evolved in almost 30, 40 years when you started this whole thing, how you see things now, and what do you think about how all these dark sky networks all around the world working together to advocate for the dark skies, and how we can make it more efficient, or we can say how we can make more proactive. We cannot, but in Pakistan, in some other places, you can be more proactive. Just like as I
Yes.
talk about light pollution in Pakistan, we have certain places where we find the light pollution in main cities areas, in mega cities like Karachi and Lahore, Islamabad, but
Yeah.
rest of the Pakistan, it's still dark.
Yes.
And people like you is a complete inspiration for me. That to be honest, yes, whenever I see your work, whenever I see you, it's like a complete inspiration, because you have chosen an unconventional workplace. This is a little tough. It's, I would say, as I can imagine, when you started your journey, it must be very tough initially. What do you say about this? I mean, I asked you so many questions at once. Yes.
There's a lot of questions. Let me get into the first one. I remember as a child, I spent my childhood years growing up in Florida. And I remember going out into the backyard and just seeing it just like incredibly dark, very, 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 very good view of the stars. And I remember when the first street light went into our neighborhood, and it's like, okay, now we can walk around the block or run around the neighborhood at night and not fall down in the darkness. But the lights have changed so much. It's a slow creep. You don't really know that it's happening until all of a sudden it's gone. And that's kind of like the frog in the pot of water, that if you turn on the heat slowly, it'll eventually just boil to death because it doesn't know how to jump out. And that's what's kind of going on here. We don't recognize that the stars are gone until they're gone, and then it's too late. So, there's two things here. A, it's changing the wavelength of light that's being used in cities. We have lived under high pressure sodium lights for 50 years, which are amber. Nobody complained. Nobody made any complaint about that. Now, with the advent of these white LEDs, which came online, a few years ago, millions and millions and millions of them were made because they were cheap. And so now the big companies like Philips and Siemens and GE, and, they're trying to unload all of these white LED lights. Now I got involved with, I'm working with some different communities and to introduce them to 2200 Kelvin lights. And sharing with them how they can preserve their own night. So I've helped the city of Stanley, Idaho, which is in the Central Idaho Dark Sky Reserve, for them to retrofit from 3000 Kelvin to 2200 Kelvin. And now I'm also working with the Yellowstone National Park, which was the first national park in the world, for them to retrofit and for them to get their dark sky certification. So there's, you know, how do we change the lighting in cities, which is a little bit of a more of an uphill push. And then there's how do we cultivate the tourism in the places that are still dark so that people can create that economic engine in these dark sky areas, so that when they realize, wait a minute, tourists are coming and will give us their dollars for us to have the lights out. So when they see a light go in that's going to disrupt that, they go, wait a minute, let's do something different, because we want to keep this flood of these tourist dollars coming into our environment. Now, in the book, I was able to mention a couple of different examples of how the Atacama Desert, which has the LUMA, the big array of all of the radio telescopes, and how around those observatories, those scientific observatories, astrotourism sprung up. So more places started to open to cultivate that and provide smaller observatories that would maybe have like a 16-inch or a 10-inch, so that people could do the observations. So you can go and visit the big science observatories during the day, but you don't get to look through the telescope. So they started to create these other smaller observatories for people to go there. Now, the same thing is happening across the Atlantic in South Africa in a district called the Karoo, which is very arid, very dry. And there's an observatory there called SALT, South African Large Telescope. And so now around that observatory has started to spring up astrotourism vendors. So hotels with the name Glitterland, or the Jupiter restaurant. So they embrace this thematic. And so the example that I use in my book is the Fringe Festival that happened in Scotland. Initially it was called the Edinburgh Arts Festival, and it began right after World War II. And it brought together musicians and dancers and classical artists to come to Edinburgh to perform. And the idea was to heal the world, to bring together these people that were once fighting, to bring them together around the arts, because arts brings together all people.
Yes.
And so what happened at the first one was 8 theater groups from Edinburgh and around Scotland showed up and said, well, we're the adjunct festival. You know, for those of you who can't get tickets to get into the big one, and it became the Fringe. Now, curiously, what happened was the Fringe Festival eventually became bigger than the original Edinburgh Festival. And now there's 250 Fringe festivals around the world. So what I'm asserting is there will come a time, and we're moving towards that time, where you'll no longer need a multi-million-dollar observatory to go in for a fringe of astrotourism and build around it. They'll just start doing it. And any place that's dark, you know, the same skill sets that are used in the Atacama Desert or the Karoo or somewhere out in the outback of Australia can be used in Pakistan. So, you know, part of what television...
This is what I was... Yes, this is what I was... Sorry for interruption.
No, please.
Yes. This is what I was noticing during the talk, that your book is so important, and it is at the right time that your book is launching. And if it is going to be publicized in Pakistan, especially to promote astrotourism, especially, what I feel, because there are so many dark spaces and people need to think proactively, because we always talk about Pakistan can be a tourist country, Pakistan have potential of tourism. And it has those potential, because there are so many dark spaces, there are so many tourist spots, especially connected to the nature, but people actually don't know how to build a astrotourist activity over there. And your book is actually going to reveal the secrets of astrotourism. Yes, this is what I feel, because Yes. A
No,
lot of people, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, please, I'm sorry.
A lot of people actually think about tourism activity here in Pakistan, but they actually come up with the similar ideas, old techniques of doing marketing and doing all those litter with the lights, polluting the environment. But through this, maybe people will get some awareness about the light pollution, as well
Yes,
as they will, yes,
yes,
this is very important, because people will understand that how beautiful Pakistan is right now. It lived under the darkness for years, and now it's high time to preserve it and save the heritage for the future. This is
yes,
what I, yes,
yes. So my book was written for the vendor. So it's for the business side. It's for the person who's going to be serving the astrotourist. The other books written by Mizone and Stemek were about the tourist and where they should go. And my book is written
right,
for the person who has the site and how do you attract those people, where you're going to find them, how to develop a destination, the concerns of light pollution in general as they affect, the flora and fauna, the biosphere, human health. And I mean, it goes into great lengths on, what to do, how you want to make an attraction for people. And a big part of it, I think, is for people to tap into their own star lore. There's a book that I recommend highly. It's called Star Stories by Anthony Avini. And I just finished reading it. It was so hard to put down, but it's about all of the different stories from all of the different cultures around the world. So I'm sure Pakistan must have their own star stories. And this is what you want to share with your guest. This is what they're not going to be able to get in their home country. And the type of music to play so that you create an environment while they're outside, how to set things up for them so it's comfortable, if it's the winter time, how to make sure that they're warm, and then if it's the summertime, being able to create an environment where it's very comfortable for them. And then also mentioning, there's a chapter called What, When, and Where, like what to see, and where to see it and when to see it. And one of the
yeah,
things that I went into is the moons. The moons are usually never mentioned in astrotourism. Oh, the moon is, it's going to block us from seeing the stars. But for people who live in the city, to actually be in the countryside under moonlight, it's magical. It's beautiful. So I, suggest, you could have a series of 12 moons, and they all have different names. In
yes,
America, there's the beaver moon, which is when beavers start to build their houses and go into hibernation. Or there's the corn moon, which is when it's time to harvest or when it's time to plant. So creating an opportunity for people to come out and just simply enjoy the moonlight in the countryside. It's very enchanting.
yes. And
And then there's
yes, go ahead, please.
no, and then
Please
there's,
continue.
of course, there's the meteor storms that you want to, you can advertise those, and then there's the lunar eclipses and the solar eclipses and chasing them down and the rest of it. But again, most importantly, if you're trying to get people to come either from the big cities in, Karachi, to come out into the countryside, to be able to create an attraction for them to come to. The sky itself, without any context, doesn't hold people's attention for very long, because they don't, it's like, okay, it's a bunch of dots up in the sky, and it's up to
Yes,
the person who's the host to provide the context.
yes,
We were up at the volcano last night. It was glowing, and there was someone there with a laser pointer, and he's pointing at the sky, and he's like, this is whatever. Here's Orion's belt, and here's
wow,
Mars
right.
over here, and this is Jupiter. Don't stare at it because you'll get stupider. And I said, yeah, well, that's Sirius you're pointing to, so I guess that proves your point.
Well,
Yeah.
how do you think all these dark sky advocates, all these dark sky community all around the world working right now, are they working very efficiently? This was my next question that I was asking you. Apart from this, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my thing, that how I
Yeah.
started, because I live in a city of light that is known as City of Lights, Karachi, and people literally don't know what light pollution is when I started talking about this issue in City of Lights, Karachi, because people we have many other different issues related to our health, our security, safety, food, clothing, everything. But what you are talking about, we are talking about light pollution, which is not our concern. So it was very difficult when I started talking about this topic about light pollution, awareness of light pollution, and how we can preserve the dark skies in Pakistan. So it was really tough because everyone was in the opposite end, like you should quit this because you're going nowhere. Because when I started talking about in a different style, in a proactive style, I became myself as an alien in the public spaces and try to you must have seen those costumes that I started talking about light pollution wearing a costume and using my
Yes.
smartphone as a source of connection, that in today's world we are using sound to convert into light, and this light is made by men right now, and we are unable to see the dark sky, which is nature. So disconnect from all these applications. This is a light trap. Get away from this and see the nature and connect yourself with the nature. And Pakistan is a tourist country, and we should promote and preserve the dark skies in Pakistan. Then and there, some people actually get triggered by this message and get involved into this topic, that how we can do this. So there are so many questions related to how we can actually preserve the dark spaces in Pakistan first, and how the current dark sky advocates and the dark sky campaigns and communities working globally to work on this issue.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I think the term light pollution, they don't really know what that means. My TEDx talk, which I did in 2018, I commented on that, saying that, back in 1987, when I was talking about light pollution, people were going like, what's that? And now here it is 30 years later, and I talk about light pollution and people are going, what's that? But you mentioned climate change. Now everybody knows what that is.
Yes.
Everybody knows what climate change is. And what they're unaware of is, how much pollution are we creating just simply by making our light? And how much of the light that we're using is actually wasted because so much of it points up into the air. So the term light pollution doesn't really capture the imagination as much as how can we preserve our darkness? How do we keep our darkness from being stolen from us? The history of this planet had
Yes.
light and dark, and it's necessary for both. Without the darkness, we lose our night pollinators. Very important for the food supply. So everybody goes, yeah, food supply. I'm all for food. I'll raise my hand to protect food. So, framing it in a conversation so that the person can relate to it. Asking someone like in Karachi, when was the last time you saw the Milky Way? When was the first time that you noticed that you could no longer see the Milky Way anymore?
Yes.
Have you ever thought how not having darkness affects our own health,
This was
affects
very
the health of migrating birds or turtles or night pollinators, or nocturnal animals? The darkness, I don't know that much about the view in the Islamic world about whether darkness is seen as evil. But in the Christian, Judeo-Christian view of things, light is good, dark is bad. And it's like, well, that's really the wrong message, you know, because now we want to chase away the darkness, but in doing so, we lose half of what this world is all about. And it starts to affect the biodiversity of the planet. So I think, you know, one of the ways that our environment and our resources are protected is through the monetization of them. So for instance, if you have a stream and people are dumping pollution into it and it kills all the fish off, then people go, well, that's just the way things are. Now, if you have a stream and there's a lot of fish in it and people come to fish, another form of tourism, fishing tourism, people are getting fish out of the stream to eat, then all of a sudden now there's a reason to protect the river, to protect the water supply, because they've attached a monetary value to it. And in our world of capitalization, you know, we're not indigenous people. Indigenous people just did this automatically. There wasn't even a consideration of it. You know, there was, the way that I view this is, if you're fishing to have enough to eat, if you're fishing to have enough to trade my fish for a loaf of bread or some candles or a sack of corn, there'll always be enough fish for you. But if you're fishing for money, there's never enough money, is there? We'll always want to get more money and more money and more money, until now we no longer have fish and you no longer have money and you no longer have anything to eat. So my particular view is, through monetizing a dark sky, people will be motivated to protect it. Yes. And astrotourism spreads the tourist dollars to far-flung places where tourists would never normally go. You know, they go to the big cities, they see the museums. Okay, during the daytime, we'll go out and we'll see some ruins or whatever. But to actually go to a smaller village where the skies are just ablaze and people go out and go, yeah, you know. So that's, then there's a bigger reason for not only the people, but for the government to get involved to protect those night skies, because it's going to attract the tourist dollar. And it's a sustainable type of tourism. You know, the dark sky is never going to burn out. You know, you don't have royalties to pay, no licensing fees, no maintenance fees. You know, it's always there, but it needs to be protected. And once people realize that there's a value in having a dark sky, they'll start to protect it.
Yes, so true. We actually need so much of right amount of knowledge at the same time, how we can protect, because people actually do not connect all the dots that are actually polluting the environment. For example, light is connected to your health was very difficult for people to understand. But at one point, when they realize, when I started talking about one issue, like, have you ever heard your mother talking about depression, obesity, or something like this, or something which, yes. So this was a trigger for them. The common issue of current generation is all the psychological issues they have right now.
Yes.
They have lack of, cognitive behavior is affecting. There are so many things that they notice. And when we connect this dot to the light pollution, they somehow get understanding with this topic. Because most of the people do not care about what is happening because of the light pollution. They don't care about nocturnal birds. They don't care about turtles or anything else. They don't care about the energy wastage, but they do care about themselves.
Yes.
That's what I realized. And this is the best way to understand. And apart from that, to monetize, this was the best thing that you're talking about. Most of the people in this capitalism and this world right now, we actually don't know how we can be more proactive at one point. Like if you're talking about the darkness in Pakistan, how we can make money out of this is going to be uh, can be $1 million business or something like this. Maybe if you are doing it efficiently, effectively, doing some interesting events over there, making each restaurant filled with stars, observatory or something like this, organizing different events in different regions in Pakistan, because all different provinces in Pakistan are filled with the darkness. So there are 4 provinces. Each province have complete dark spaces, complete
Yes.
dark sky. So each space can have a best sort of astrotourist activity, and I believe that your guidance is going to help a lot. Your guidance, your activities, your supervision, or maybe you should do some events here in Pakistan to give
Yes.
them a vision. Or yes, definitely yes. So your ideas will give them a vision how they can actually build a good places here, good astrotourist spots here. So yes.
Yes.
And how do you think, what current advocacy or dark sky campaigns or community working right now? Do you think we need more artistic element to this? Because when I talk about light pollution in an artistic way, because we do have a lot of problems. We do not care about such issues like climate change. We do not care about, but we talk about something in artistic form, something which is connected with the art. People actually get interested to learn about this topic, and
Right.
at the same time they actually participate. So what do you think, do we need more story of light pollution fighter, or maybe some some stories related to the futuristic superhero or something like this, talking about light pollution, preserving the dark skies, controlling the light pollution or something like this? Do we need artistic element to this to preserve this, or do we need a lot of talk, like we need a casual talk with the general public? I think we need casual talk, not a presentation. This is the reason why I was so happy to have you here without a presentation. Seriously, because yes.
So to answer your question, you know, my philosophy is that rather than trying to change the old world, because that's too hard. People are entrenched in their headset. Create the new world, because that has yet to be tainted. You know, it's going to be easier to preserve your dark skies than it's going to be to try to change the lighting design in a city.
Yes.
Somewhere I read that it takes 100 years for any truly revolutionary thought to be embraced by the common man. So when Copernicus gave his view of the universe, and then Galileo was teaching it, it took 100 years before the common man went, oh yeah, the earth goes around the sun, right? And that's because all of the people who are holding on to the old view, you have to wait for them to die. Don't bother trying to change their view because it's too hard. Instead, create the new view, you know, create the new world and put your energy towards that. So it's going to be honestly easier to create a dark sky destination and build that industry up than it will be trying to get the cities to change their lighting design, because that's going to take a huge capital investment. It doesn't take as much to create a dark sky destination because you've already got your attraction. So what's going to happen is, this is something that I brought up to where when I was living in Idaho, the Central Idaho Dark Sky Reserve. It was the first dark sky reserve in North America. The city of Boise is 76 miles away, and it's one of the fastest growing cities in America. So the glow on the horizon is already starting to creep, and the people who are trying to preserve the core of this dark sky reserve are going, wait a minute, we're seeing what's happening over here. So there's still some time to try to get the people in Boise to go, if you want to protect this reserve, as your city grows, you've got to make sure that you grow your lighting intelligently. You can have both. You can have good lighting and you can see the night sky. It's not a zero-sum gain. And I think that's what a lot of people think is like, oh, you want to turn off all our lights, you want to make it unsafe. No, 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 no. I got into a conversation with a miner, and they have a big mining operation near the Dark Sky Reserve. And he just like went off on this huge rant against me. You dark sky people, you're trying to turn off our lights. And I just let him talk. And I went, I hear what you're saying, but that's really not what I'm talking about. I'm just simply, I'm talking about simply changing your lighting so that it's this frequency, this amber color, which is going to make it easier for, and then finally his whole tone changed. I went, oh yeah, that's a good thought. So, again, you don't meet resistance with resistance. That's never going to work. Instead meet them with the alternative, and by giving people the opportunity to see both kinds of lights. So I've used that in presentations as I have a 1900 Kelvin or 2200 Kelvin light. And then I have a 4000 Kelvin light, and I turn one on, right? And their eyes are like, oh, that's bright. And I turn the other one, it's like, oh, that's really nice. So when they see it side by side, you don't have to convince them. They automatically know. But because they don't have the contrast, they can't envision anything else. So it's, it's like taste testing, Pepsi, Coke, Pepsi, it's like you're gonna,
Yes. And apart from that, tell us about your current television series. How do you think that what you're working on right now these days, especially
when
I got to know about your.
Yeah, I'm really super excited about this. I've been working on this project for, a year or more now, doing the research necessary and getting connected with the right producer who really had the vision of this. And so I honestly, it's going to be a 1-hour documentary series weekly. Usually television series are sold in blocks of 10. And I insisted, no, it's got to be 12. Why 12? Well, because there's 12 zodiac signs. There's 12 phases of the moon. Wow. We have to build our theme on that. So every episode I'll talk a little bit about, a particular zodiacal constellation and how it has expressed itself in our culture. So for instance, the Scorpio, right? Scorpions are all over the world. So everybody had this, but here in Hawaii, there were no scorpions. So they look at that same constellation and see a big fish hook. And there's a story about how Maui, the demigod, threw his fish hook into the ocean and it caught onto the ocean floor. And he started pulling on it and pulling on it. And eventually he pulled the mountains up out of the ocean. And that's how the Polynesia was formed, right? So I'm really looking forward to being able to share all of these star stories from all of these different cultures, whether it's in Namibia or Australia or Lapland and the Aurora Borealis, and how different cultures had different ideas of what the Aurora Borealis was. And it's wild. There's one tribe in Washington State, and they saw it as like people in the other world who were playing soccer with a walrus skull. And then in another culture, it's exactly opposite. It's a bunch of walruses playing soccer with a human skull. And, and then, so by retelling these stories of these different cultures, it brings to light And literally the expression connect the dots came from what we did with the stars. That was the
Yes,
first connect the dots.
exactly. Yes.
Right. And so by bringing these to light and bringing people's awareness to it, we both preserve the stories, which are disappearing as the skies disappear, and then also cultivate, a sense of wonder and awe and curiosity about going out and looking at the sky. There's so many different ways that people look at Orion's belt. Some cultures saw it as three men in a canoe. Someone saw the Orion's belt and a sword hanging from it where the nebula is as a fire stick. Another one saw it as a plow. And when Orion was at a certain place in the sky and it was just coming up at the first, when we saw at the beginning of the evening, and it was right there, that was time to start plowing. So our civilizations were grounded in the movement of the stars. It told us when to plant, when to harvest, when animals were going to migrate, when it was time to shear the sheep. So without that, our civilizations would not have grown and spread across the planet. We used them to navigate with. A great, very contemporary story. In Belarus, there's a lot of protests going on for the government there. And there were some teenagers who were protesting and they were trying to escape. And they escaped across this frozen lake. And one of them didn't start his journey until a little bit later. And the lake ice had kind of like left and he had to swim like a really long time and was able to get a wetsuit to be able to cross this lake to get into another country. But he mentions in the article, he was able to find his way by using the stars. So even today, being able to navigate by the stars saved that young man's life. And I don't know, in Pakistan, do you have the song Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
A lot of
yes.
people don't realize the rest of the song, the rest of that story is all about the navigating by those stars.
Yes,
We only
yes.
usually just hear the first four stanzas, up above
Yes.
this world so high, how I wonder what you are. Well, the rest of it, which is in the introduction of my book, talks about, I use you to get home. Without your spark, I wouldn't know which way to go. You peep into my window and thank you so much for being there because without you, I would be lost, essentially. And the reason I think we don't tell the rest of that is because we've stopped using the stars to navigate with.
So true. So true. And I did not tell my listeners about the other things of Mr. Marlin, that he is International Dark Sky Advocate. He is also International Astronomical Union Dark Skies Ambassador. He's International Dark Sky Association Delegate, as well as he is also founder and CEO of LUMA, which is his company. Tell us more about your profile, because I wanted listener to listen to your story first, because as I know you are a good storyteller, and your journey, your whole life is like a legendary for us. For example, literally, because when I see you as an inspiration, what you're doing, and I talk about that this is career as well. Look at this is career as well. This is a journey as well. This can be something that you are living your happy life with all the things that you wanted in your life. You can still be at the same pace. Like what people think that, oh, you are like becoming a nomad or something, like you're going crazy because of the light pollution, because so it is not like this. You can still have a lot of things to do in your life. It is not like you are moving into jungle or doing some crazy stuff. It is not like this. It is like educating people about this issue, which is very important. And someday you will realize that, yes, this message was very good for us. It was very important for us. Yes. So yes, yes, please tell us about yourself. What else? What do you think that people should know about you? Because as
Oh,
far as I know, yes.
so I haven't done LUMA for several years now. I've moved into the Astrotourism and putting my focus on that. And there will be some elements of LUMA written into the television series. So I'm very
Wow.
happy about that. And we'll be able to do some of the LUMA performances out in natural settings. And so I'm excited about that. But you know, when I left my career and left Los Angeles and Las Vegas, it wasn't so much to chase a dark sky. It was to live a sustainable lifestyle. I wanted to grow my own food. And I'm here on a little acre and a half spot that has taken me 16 years to put together. And I've been planting fruit trees for all of those years. So right now on my little place, I've got beehives, I've got mango trees, coconut trees, banana, papaya, soursop, a couple of varieties of avocado, um, um, and a vegetable garden. You know, I grow ginger and turmeric, and of course, you know, my veggies, kale, and other things like that.
Wow.
And I have some ducks. I have a couple of a chicken. Well, so
Right.
yes, it's clucking and ducking. So I have clucks and ducks. And but yeah, that was part of my desire to move out here, was to create a sustainable lifestyle and to set that as an example. My water is caught from the sky because there's no water pipes coming here to this part of the island. My electricity is created from solar panels on the roof, and I have to be
Wow.
very conscious of how much electricity I'm using, and, you know, unplugging certain things at night so that I still have electricity in the morning for the sun to come up. So learning how
Great.
to tread lightly. I learned how to make wine with my mangoes, and you know,
Wow.
so that's yeah. I opened a bottle last night from 2012. It was the last bottle, and it worked. It was still good. You know, I was really happy. You know,
Right.
so yeah, that's a big part of it for me, is to learn how to live in balance as best as possible with our environment, because as there's more and more people in the world, we put more and more stress on it.
Actually, yes. And we are actually not caring about this. Maybe it's a level of understanding with the nature. It's because of the consciousness. People do not have enough of understanding with the nature and the surrounding. This is really, really important, that how you can live your life uh, with more wisdom. What I say, this is life living with the wisdom. It's not living your life like every other people is living. Like what other people are doing, you can do the same, but living your life with the wisdom is very, very important. Thank you so much for you to coming and joining us today's talk. It was very lovely to see you, and it was amazing talk. And I hope to see you in Pakistan very soon.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. And I will be sharing your all the links in this recording, in this message, with all my listeners to go to those links and check his work, and also your book launch, which is going to be on. Yes, this is very
Uh,
important.
it's going to come out the first week of May. It's going to be through Business Expert Press. I will send you a flyer that will provide a 20% discount on the purchase
Wow.
through the end of May. The publisher wanted to do that because they're really behind me supporting the development of astrotourism. So that's their part in helping get the word out.
So I'll post this before, so people will get a chance to get this quicker as possible and get this 20% discount as well.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Good to see you. And take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Aloha, everybody.
Aloha. Bye bye.
Aloha.